It's one of the most famous musicals in the world.
In all your fantasies.
But the recent lockdowns have seen the curtain fall on what was already a sellout season of The Phantom of the Opera. The show was scheduled to tour both Sydney and Melbourne later this year, but today it was postponed indefinitely.
It's a massive blow. We'd sold over 100,000 tickets. What is that going to mean in the future? What's going to happen when we do finally get through this pandemic? What's going to be left?
It's just the latest casualty of this pandemic, and after 18 months of cancellations, the industry is at breaking point.
Well, it's a devastating time for the industry. I think none of us ever expected, particularly how well the year kicked off, that we'd be in this position.
Major shows like Hamilton and Harry Potter have been hard hit by lockdowns. Both are produced by Michael Cassel.
Our productions of Harry Potter and Hamilton specifically, those cast members, our crew, all of the management team, creative staff, musicians who work on the show, they've all been stood down under their contracts. We have been advancing annual leave to ensure that there is money in people's bank accounts.
Harry Potter and the Cursed Child opened here in Melbourne in 2019. Since then, it's weathered 5 lockdowns as well as strict 50% COVID capacity limits. But the future of the production is under threat by Australia's continuing lockdowns. And its producer says the show and his other musicals like Hamilton could soon meet the same fate as The Phantom of the Opera.
Given it's a commercial proposition, of course, there will come a time when we say this is just not sustainable. With the uncertainty of how long we're in this for and how long we're shut down, we can't keep these productions sustained and put on ice. And The Phantom of the Opera today is sadly an example of what might be upon us here in Australia.
Federal Arts Minister Paul Fletcher told 730 the government has provided financial support to those productions.
There's $1 million of RISE funding in Hamilton. Another example is Opera Australia. You mentioned Phantom of the Opera and the fact that they've sadly had to cancel that. We've worked closely with Opera Australia. They've received significant funding under the Sustainability Fund.
At the height of the pandemic last year, many artists found themselves ineligible for JobKeeper because most work as freelancers. So in June last year, the federal government committed $250 million to the sector through a Creative Economy Jobs package. Of that, $90 million was offered in concessional loans, which will eventually need to be repaid. In March this year, an extra $125 million was made available through the same scheme.
We've got lockdowns at the moment, and that is very tough because it means venues closed, performances cancelled, artists losing their gigs. That's why it's important that we've got the $600 COVID disaster relief payment available through Services Australia.
Artists like Ben Lee feel the live music industry has not been given the same allowances as big sporting events.
We're mostly talking about 500 people or 1,000 people in a space together, even an outdoor space. It's just very clearly not the same level of risk as bringing 30,000 people together for a State of Origin game.
I'm doing the exact same thing as I did in 2020, which was release an album and then reschedule or cancel and then postpone a whole bunch of dates. So it's very, the true meaning of Groundhog Day.
Fellow Australian musician Diesel has also produced a new record in lockdown.
In the music industry, we were like one of the first industries to really get shut down, boom, straight away. We'll be the last light to get turned back on again fully.
There was a real feeling that by October, November this year, we would be, we'd be in a vaccinated country. We'd be in a situation where we could have a summer of festivals, shows, tours and everything would be back on.
The CEO of industry body ARIA says the optimism of 6 months ago has totally dissolved for the sector.
Some people in this industry have had no income or very, very little income for almost 18 months now. We have to get some consistency and some protocols around national touring, border closures.
In the face of so much uncertainty, the industry is now calling for government underwritten insurance for shows.
All of the commercial insurers are no longer supporting live entertainment, and that's a challenge.
We're looking for a roadmap out of COVID, and we're looking for those particular supports.
Because the decisions that trigger a shutdown of a show are decisions made by state governments, they're the level of government that is best suited to provide a specific insurance type fund.
Many in the industry say the federal government's funding scheme only goes so far, a sentiment backed by a new report from PricewaterhouseCoopers which found the Australian music industry as a whole shrunk by 39% last year, a loss of around $700 million.
In all my time at Opera Australia, I've never gone out to government and said, we need help. I've never asked them to give us money. But when we are unable to sell tickets, when we're not in control of our destiny, when we have no other option, then I am saying we need help.